If everyone will, please start moving towards your seats so we can get started. We will hold up so the ladies can get their photos made. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that. I'd like to welcome everyone to the third meeting of both the Interim Joint Committee on Economic Development and Workforce Investment and the Interim Joint Committee on Tourism, Small Business, and Information Technology. My co-chairs and I thank you all for being here, and I trust that you made it here without incident. I understand we have a few members that are behind a truck fire of some nature that will not make it. They're expected to be blocked for about 4 hours, so they're going to have an enjoyable afternoon. Would also like to thank the Kentucky State Fair Board, Mr. Beck. Thank you for your hospitality, sir, and for all your staff for allowing us to be here today, and also Commissioner Ryan Quarles and all the staff who've been involved in planning the fair. We do appreciate your efforts this year in this very unusual and very trying times. At this point, I'm going to ask Andrew to call the roll, and would ask that each member, when you answer the roll, to indicate in your response whether you are here in Frankfort office, or here remotely from my district. And please keep in mind that we will call roll for both committees separately. And would also ask that you please keep your microphone muted until it is time for you to speak, so we can all hear the presentations and questions that may be asked. Andrew, could you please call the roll?
Senator Berg. Senator Clark. Senator Girdler.
Here and in my district in Pulaski County.
Thank you. Senator Harper Angel.
Present remotely in my district.
Thank you. Senator Higdon. Senator Kerr.
Here in Lexington, Kentucky, where everybody's somebody, where everybody's loved for what they are, and where nobody is a stranger.
Thank you. Senator Schroeder. Senator Thomas. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise.
Senator Wise is present from the 16th Senate District.
Thank you. Representative Banta. Representative Beckler. Representative Blanton.
Present remotely from the 92nd District.
Thank you. Representative Booker. Representative Bratcher.
Here in the room.
Representative Brenda.
I'm here for my home district in Garrett County.
Representative Cantrell. Representative Elliott.
I am present remotely from my district.
Thank you. Representative Freeland,
Here in person.
Representative Gentry,
Here in the room.
Representative Hinkle, Representative Huff,
Here in the room.
Representative Kulkarni,
Here in the room.
Representative Maddox, Representative Petrie,
Present remotely from the Capitol Annex.
thank you. Representative Rowland,
Present in the room.
Representative Tackett Lafferty, Representative Wheatley,
Here in the 65th District.
thank you. Co-Chair Carroll,
Here in the room.
Co-Chair Weber,
Present in the room.
Senator Byrd, Senator Clark, Senator Girdler,
Here in my district in Somerset.
thank you. Senator Harper Angel,
Present in the district.
thank you. Senator Higdon, Senator Kerr,
Here in Lexington, Kentucky, where everybody is somebody, where everybody's loved for what they are, and where nobody is a stranger.
thank you. Senator Schroeder, Senator Thomas, Senator Wilson, Senator Wise,
Senator Wise is present from the 16th Senate District.
Representative Beckler, Representative Bojanowski, Representative Branham Clark,
Present from my district.
thank you. Representative Brown, thank you. Representative Donahue, Representative Frazier,
Present in the room.
thank you. Representative Freeland, thank you. Representative Fugit,
Present in the room.
thank you. Representative Goforth, Representative Gooch, Representative Hale,
Present in the room.
thank you. Representative Heath,
Present in the room.
thank you. Representative Howard, Representative King,
Yes, sir, in the room.
thank you. Representative Koenig, Representative McCool, Representative Meredith, Representative Miller, Representative Palumbo,
Here in my Frankfurt office.
thank you. Representative Raymond,
I'm here from home.
thank you. Representative Reed,
Here in the room.
thank you. Representative Roberts,
Present in person.
thank you. Representative Rowland,
Present in the room.
thank you. Representative Sheldon,
Present from home, remotely.
thank you. Representative Sorolis, thank you. Representative Stevenson,
Present in the room.
thank you. Representative Tackett Lafferty,
Present from the 95th District.
thank you. Representative Tate, Representative White,
Present in the 99th District.
thank you. Representative Wiederstein, Representative Yates, Co-Chair Carroll,
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Pratt,
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Turner. Is there anybody online that did not answer the roll, please?
Adam Bowling's present from his home district. Didn't hear my name called, but.
Okay, I believe we do have a quorum for both committees. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the July 30th meeting of the Economic Development and Workforce Investment Committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Minutes are approved. We also have a quorum for the Tourism, Small Business, and Information Technology Committee. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the July 30th meeting of that committee?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. We will move into the agenda. And first to the table, I would like to welcome Mr. David Beck, the President and CEO of Kentucky Venues. Mr. Beck, welcome. And again, thank you for your hospitality. And we do appreciate very much you being here to say a few words. Please introduce yourself for the record, and you have the floor, sir.
And our management team and my colleagues, we want to welcome you to the Kentucky Exposition Center. Over to my right is our chairman, Mr. Steve Wilson. And we have several board members on the property today, but I think they're out probably in some of the livestock shows. And to my left over here, we have Mr. Kevin Moore, General Manager. And Mr. Chairman, if I may just take a few moments and just share it might be of interest overall from a tourism standpoint. Kentucky Venues is the name we use in marketing our properties, which are both the Kentucky Exposition Center you're here now, but also the Kentucky International Convention Center downtown Louisville. And we're governed under the Kentucky State Fair Board in the law and assigned to the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet administratively. And so we welcome you here. And I like to say that you being here means a lot to us. It shows we're open for business and also demonstrates opportunity for us to share with you how much we appreciate the support the Kentucky General Assembly has provided us over the last couple of years. And I'd like to share a little bit about both properties, if I may. Some of you attended the grand opening of the International Convention Center downtown on August 6, 2018. And it's up and going well. We've had major improvements to that property, though, even since it was open. Roof renovation, changing some of the interior, and adding AV equipment to the conference center, which is required in this day and time if you're going to recruit business and take care of the clients. At this facility, you notice if you came in the front gate today, the new signage. And as we meet with clients, getting people on our property is critical. We've gone from 8 to 10 lanes. We have electronic signage now. We can give directions. We may have 6 events on our property the same day. So help getting good directions when they enter helps enhance that customer experience, but also ease of payment, be able to have the technology to accommodate that customer and provide the best experience for them. Cardinal Stadium at the north of the property, you helped us get that down last year. We appreciate that, and you'll see where that stood. Now we have some asphalt, and now we have people parking on a hard surface, and that's beneficial in many ways. South of the property off Phillips Lane, we had the old transportation building. We demolished that and gotten that out of the way. We had a mountain of dirt here that had been accumulating for over 26 years from various water basins in this community. We have now moved that. That gives us 8 more acres of productive land that we can use. As I walked that property, I realized behind me here on the east side of this building, running parallel with Preston, we had a low area. Down home we call that a slough where water gathers. We were able to take that dirt and fill that in, a lot of it, saved a substantial amount of money as it relates to transportation costs, but also improved that land. We were planning that last fall, not knowing about COVID. Now that's given us a lot more space on the east side of the property that can be used for sporting events and outdoor exhibits, which is very much demand now with a lot of the clients we work with. So we're excited about that. We'll have over 200 shows a year in a normal year. I hope we get back to that at this property. And the facilities downtown, we'll have about 130 events. So you look at 330 plus events a year, that's a lot of economic activity here in this market in the Commonwealth. So we appreciate that business. I'm proud of our team. We do a lot of marketing, working closely with tourism and Louisville Tourism and others to make that happen. I'll give you an idea of some of the shows and the size they are. The Farm Machinery Show in February, we'll have 300,000 people on this property in a 4-day period. The North American Livestock Acquisition in November, the largest purebred and livestock event in North America and a good part of the world. There's a lot of communities that would love to have that in their backyard if they could do that. The Kentucky State Fair. Normally we would have it a full fair at this time. We normally have about 600,000 people attend that over an 11-day period. The last 2 years, I've asked that we track where people are coming from. If you come through the gate for the State Fair, I have no idea where you're coming from. But if you purchase tickets online in advance, we know where you're coming from. And for the last 2 years, we've had guests on this property from each of Kentucky's 120 counties. And we're proud of that. We want it to be Kentucky State Fair. This is where Kentuckians come together. Last year, we had 23,000 entries. This year, of course, we have very few. Last year, about 11,000 livestock exhibits. This year, we've got about just shy of 4,000, about 3,800 livestock here. But when you walk the grounds and you talk to those young people, when they take their masks down for the photo, they're excited to be here. They either raised that animal or they purchased that animal, got it ready for the fair. They learned a lot about accountability, the business aspect of the operation, and the leadership skills. So them to be able to be a part of that is a tremendous experience for them. The World Championship Horse Show. This is the 116th State Fair. This is the 117th World Championship Horse Show. Think about that. It's a rich tradition we have here. We'll have a little over 1,400 horses, normally closer to 2,000. So we're having that, and that's important for the saddlebred industry. And I just want to say we really appreciate the livestock industry and the equine industry working with us, recognizing the importance to be safe. I might just share with you that we put a lot of emphasis on health and safety. When I first came on board, one of my number one priorities was that we have a safe environment for our employees, our guests, our sponsors, our participants. And several months ago, about a year ago or so, we put together a new position on our staff, a compliance officer. We brought that person in just to help us make sure we were in compliance with every local, state, and federal law, regulation, and ordinance. And that's proven to be very beneficial. As we work with clients for the last several months prior to COVID coming on our property, whether it be electrical code or an OSHA code, we want to make sure all of our compliance, including ourselves, were in full compliance. When COVID came about, that was important for us, that we follow the guidelines. And we demonstrated time after time again our ability to follow the guidelines. You may realize we submit proposals to Frankfurt to be approved for each and every one of our major events. To do that, we have a very detailed game plan that we develop with the client. We submit that. We write that language so we can be flexible to modify as needed to meet the current needs. For example, we may have submitted a plan in May for a group to be here in July. At that particular time, masks were not required. But at the time the show came out, it was. We understand that. We modify to whatever the current standards are, and we've proven that. Working hand in hand with Louisville Tourism, we have an opportunity, and we're making an application now for what I call the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval. It's a star rating that shows that you handle all the disinfection, the disease control, all the health requirements nationwide. We're making an application for that, and that will help us further demonstrate in the marketplace that you can come here, you can have your events, and you'll be assured that every aspect is under compliance And we're in a position to do that, always meeting the minimum, but also in a position to extend that and enhance that as needed based on the circumstances or the client's needs. You know, you can have the best safety rules, health rules, but if you can't implement them, you've not accomplished anything. You can implement a rule, but if it's not sufficient on the safety side, the health side, you've not accomplished much on that. So it takes both, the operations side as well as the health specialists, to make sure we're doing it the right way. Every venue is different, and even the same event on a different venue may require different guidelines. So we're very flexible, and I'm so proud of our team that as we work with many people around the country, we offer them to help them with their plans. And by doing so, that's like continuing education. We bring back to the camp what we learned from that. We started planning a state fair, Mr. Chairman, prior to next year's. So we were well in planning back in the winter, way ahead, before this year's state fair. But when COVID hit, we realized we were going to have some changes. We have a fair board committee that focuses on the state fair. That group met every Monday afternoon, and we added to that committee representatives of the food industry, the entertainment industry like concerts, and also the amusement side, amusement rides and all, and put together a group that met weekly. And we as the staff worked with that group and did a lot of research between the meetings and developed a plan that was submitted and it was approved. And after that, we saw the spike in the numbers. The administration asked us to take a look at it. We did. We had a plan B and a plan C, what we could do to make those changes. So we're always going to be flexible and try to do the best job that we can. We've been busy trying to book plans, rebook clients. So far, COVID, in my opinion, has cost us about 10.5, getting close to $11 million loss of business. We're seeing business deferred, and we're rebooking it down the road. We're seeing leisure travel change. We're seeing business travel change. We're seeing the convention trade and all trade shows changing as well. The day of a room like this with a head table and a bunch of tables of 8 to 10 people, rounds, that's not the market of the future. And I believe for us to be successful, to continue to meet that demand in the future and serve our clients and meet the needs of the Commonwealth, we got to be able to adapt to that. So we're not just trying to follow the trend, we're trying to lead the trend and make sure we're on the cutting edge to make sure we do it and do it the right way. Let me just say on behalf of all of our team, we're glad you're here. We mean that. I try to meet with every client, show manager that I can to learn what we can do better. I would ask you, if I may, if you have suggestions for us, if you see something we can do better, let me know. Let our team know. Or if you have customers or clients or constituents that use these properties, if they have ideas how we can be a better servant, let us know. And I want to say this too. We partner with every aspect of Kentucky tourism. I mentioned this earlier today. I'll share it again just briefly as an example. Several months ago, I was speaking to the Paducah Chamber, and we had just hosted a statewide, a national bus meeting here in Louisville, Kentucky. Over 800 owners of tour bus companies. Well, that was good for our community here, but I explained to them that when they come back, they're going to be bringing tours all over Kentucky. They'll be at Kentucky Dam. They'll be at Henderson. They'll be at Owensboro, Lexington, Northern Kentucky. So anything we can do to prime the pump, every meeting doesn't have to be on our property. We want our job to work together, cooperate with everybody to help to grow the business for Kentucky. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to be here. If I can address any questions you may have, the committee, I'm sure I'll be glad to try to do that, or our chairman, Mr. Wilson, or Mr. Moore, will be glad to entertain any questions any of you might have this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. What are you all, with the conversations that are already going on, looking forward to next year for this event? And I think it's everyone's desire that this event come back bigger and better than it's ever been. And what plans do you all have, sir?
Well, yes, sir. What's on the drawing board is go back to the traditional fair with the same type of increase in attendance. Now that we have this experience and others, we'll add that to it so we can take it up or down depending on the needs. But allow me just to share, if I may, one example. We had on the drawing board this past year. Of course, we weren't able to execute it. And I'm borrowing this from those of us old enough to remember the World's Fair. I saw it first at the fair, that concept. To me, the Kentucky State Fair is the largest classroom in the Commonwealth. We teach rural-urban relationships, understanding, and we see that as part of our mission to do that. Also, economic development. We think that's important as well. We'd like to be able to have area, we've designated some area that we can save space for new entrepreneurs to come in. They may be a startup company in Kentucky, And we'd like to have them come, provide them space so they can demonstrate their new idea, their new concept. And we can do that effectively. What that does, it may give them opportunity to attract some employees. It may be opportunity to attract some investment. It might be able to create some markets for them. But some people might be able to see that, and that might just give them the nudge they need. Working with local chambers, the state chambers, working with local economic development councils, but also our state cabinet for economic development. We'd like to recruit some folks to do that. Maybe have 8 or 10 that they can come in and do that. We discussed on our staff, if you're busy putting together a startup, do you have time to build a booth? Do you have time to do the promotion? We might be able to provide some help in that capacity, but use some experienced people and others to partner with them to showcase the innovative spirit and opportunity to grow businesses here in Kentucky. So that's just one example that personally we'd like to see that happen. And so we're looking at how we can modify it. We will maintain the traditional, but also be open to new ideas. Those that will survive in the future aren't just the fittest and the brightest, but those that can adapt. And we need to be adapting our programs to meet that need and still fulfill that mission.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Do we have any other questions of Mr. Beck? Anyone online? Okay. Very good. Mr. Beck, again, thank you for being here, and we do appreciate your efforts and look forward to things getting back to some semblance of normalcy next year. And if you do run across a corn dog, could you send it this way, please?
Yes, sir. I'll look for 2, one for you and one for me.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. We have the Tourism Cabinet here to give an update and kind of look through their presentation a little bit. And it's, it's tough to see the numbers go down being so strong last year, but it is what it is, and we will make the adjustments and then move forward as the years pass. And Mr. Mike Berry and Mr. Michael Mangio, gentlemen, are you all online?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, please introduce yourselves for the record, and then you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm Mike Berry. I'm the Secretary of the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet.
And I'm Mike Mangitt. I'm the Commissioner of the Kentucky Department of Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the Joint Committee for having us here today. The presentation that we have has been hopefully distributed in person to those of you who are there, and to those of you who are joining virtually, there are copies for you. There's a lot of information in this because we have just recently received our survey back from the field, and I will try not to bore you with numbers, but as the chairman indicated, there are some stark realities in the numbers that we have discovered, but there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. I do want to give a shout out before I begin to our teammates at Kentucky Venues, to David Beck and his staff, not only for hosting the meeting today and for the work that they're doing to put on a very unconventional state fair, but I would also say we work with them on an almost daily basis to address the changes that have been in their industry. And I will tell you that they and many more like them in the tourism industry of our Commonwealth are being innovative and working to prepare themselves not only for the present and a new world, but for the new world order that perhaps will come post-COVID. So thank you to them. A little bit of background on me, just real quickly. I spent 33 years at the Kentucky Derby Festival in Louisville, and I retired from them. And I failed retirement. I spent about 10 weeks there, and I was very honored to be asked by Governor Beshear to join his administration as the Secretary of the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet. The goal for us is to be good stewards of the resources of the Commonwealth. And again, I'm proud to be part of an administration who has the safety and the welfare of all citizens of the Commonwealth at heart. I can tell you that I did not expect to be dealing with a lot of the things that I am when I took this position, but it's been not only a challenge, but it's been a blessing in some instances because you really get to see how much people care about the Commonwealth of Kentucky in this particular cabinet. As you all are very well aware, our cabinet is very retail in nature. We touch not only the citizens of our Commonwealth, but also our visitors. So what I'd like to do is I would like to give you a few overview numbers of what tourism was like in pre-COVID and what it is like during COVID. There is, as I mentioned, a PowerPoint presentation that is available if you don't have it there to follow along. You should have received from the Kentucky Department of Tourism numbers for our economic impact survey that was just completed. They were sent to each member of the General Assembly for each county in your district. Visitor spending and visitation growth in Kentucky, to no one's surprise, increased in 2019. These numbers are all through the calendar year 2019, and were done by Tourism Economics, which is a research partner for the Department of Tourism. Visitor trips to the Commonwealth topped 73.8 million, and visitor spending was nearly 7.9 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars in 2019. The economic impact rose to about 11.8 billion. It generated over 95,000 jobs and $823 million in state and local taxes. Tourism spending resulted in almost $1 billion for recreation, 1.8 billion in accommodations, 1.6 billion in retail, 1.6 billion in transportation, and $2 billion for food and beverage. So we asked them to calculate if there wasn't a tourism sales in Kentucky, what would it mean for additional taxes to the men and women of the Commonwealth? And what they told us is every household in Kentucky would have to pay an additional $475 in state and local taxes to replace what would be missing if tourism did not exist. And then, sort of the tale of two cities, the impact of COVID. When COVID hit in earnest in the month of March, our world was changed. These are numbers for the total travel industry in the United States, but it was an economic loss of about $1.2 trillion and about an 8 million total economic loss. That's 9 times more than the impact of the 9/11 attacks. And then, we look at Kentucky in particular in weekly travel spending. At the beginning of March of this year, travel spending was about $195 million each week in Kentucky. By the time we got to the last week of April, which was the low point for travel and tourism in the Commonwealth, that number had fallen to 19 million in a week. So from 195 million to 19 million in a period of just shy of 2 months. The good news is that it has started to rebound somewhat. Last week, or as of the 15th of August, that number had rebounded somewhat to $126 million, but still certainly not up to the levels that it was pre-COVID. Just to point out, that means that that's about a 40% drop in weekly travel spending in Kentucky. Mike, next slide. And it also means that we have lost in Kentucky about $2.9 billion total in travel spending. That number has gotten to the point now that it's only about $85 million per week. But again, $85 million is still extensive. What does that mean in terms of revenue loss? Well, obviously, there's a big impact from tax revenue. on the federal and the locals, but just zooming in on the state tax revenue losses, $96 million has been lost in tax revenue since the beginning of COVID through the 15th of August. But as I mentioned, this is kind of also, maybe it's the tale of three cities, because there is some good news. There's some silver lining to that cloud that's out there. As you either saw or heard from the weekly increases, they are gradual, but they are in a positive direction since our low point the last week of April of this year. We find that outdoor activities are leading indicators of travel spending, and they're currently showing increased activities. Even though the season is rapidly coming to an end, and I put that as a disclaimer on there because even though we have some good news and we're hearing good occupancy rates and things like that from some of our state parks and some of our attractions that are associated with outdoor activities, that season is rapidly coming to an end. So we're very fortunate that a lot of Kentucky is, our tourism is based in lakes and in campgrounds, and then of course our state park system. And again, I can't thank the General Assembly enough for the generosity and the commitment that you all have made over the last biennium budget and this year's annual budget to help, as we call it, restore the finest. These are dollars that are going to keep our state park system viable and the tourism draw that they are. And speaking of state park lodges, the occupancy in our lodges is overall around 56%. And while that may not be as great as we would like to have it, the state average for motel hotel occupancy is only 43.9%. So our state parks, because they are affiliated with outdoor activities, are running quite a bit ahead of the occupancy percentages. And so I think that really positions Kentucky well for the recovery in the travel and the tourism industry. I'm going to call on Commissioner Manget now to continue as he talks a little bit about some of the research that we've done in travel sentiment. And in addition, why Kentucky is positioned so well, not only geographically. You've heard that old adage that we are within a day's drive of 2/3 of the nation's population, but why people are choosing to drive and why they may be choosing to drive to Kentucky. Commissioner?
Thank you, Secretary Berry. I appreciate being here and the invitation to speak today. As the Secretary pointed out, our industry was hit very hard. We were hit first. We were hit really probably one of the hardest industries hit by COVID, and we're slowly coming back. But there is good news. We work with a company called Longwoods International. Longwoods is a long-time participant in the travel industry. This survey actually comes from the longest standing travel research survey in the country. And believe it or not, they are now in their 18th wave of doing this research on travel sentiment. It's been interesting to watch the changes. But most recent that came out just a week ago said that 67% of their respondents have travel plans in the next 6 months. What does that mean? That equals pent-up demand to travel. If you go back through each of these surveys and each wave of the survey results, that number hasn't changed much. I guess you could say that we are hardwired to travel, and there is pent-up demand. But some things that really position Kentucky well are the fact that 27% of those respondents who are planning to travel have changed their plans from flying to driving. Why is that important for Kentucky? We are a drive market. We don't have a lot of what's called airlift in our industry. A lot of direct flights, and I think we all know the impact that has not just on tourism, but manufacturing, recruitment, and everything else. So we are known as a drive state. Obviously, we have Interstate 65 and 75 both going through Kentucky north to south, bringing a lot of the snowbirds down from Canada and the upper Midwest to the Gulf and Florida. And we do see our share of visitation from that, but that's an opportunity for us as well, that people are now looking to drive. And what is not listed here is the length of time they're willing to drive for a short vacation has exploded and really expanded. Used to be it would be anywhere from 4 to 6 hours for a long weekend. Now we're seeing people who are willing to drive up to 10 to 12 hours for a long weekend. Again, it's that pent-up demand. But of primary concern is safety, and it feeds into why people want to drive. They can control what's going on in their car. They can control what's going on with their family unit or group of friends. But they want assurances that they're going to be safe at the destination where they're going, at the attraction, the hotel, etc. So they're doing a lot of research on their own to where they're going to find out what safety protocols have you put in place. Again, as the Secretary mentioned earlier, and as Mr. Beck pointed out, the safety precautions that the fair has taken, Kentucky has done well nationally when looking at those protocols, and we are perceived as a relatively safe destination at this point. And interestingly, in one of the most recent waves, Longwoods asked about mask mandates. Was that having an impact? 61% of respondents said they would only visit or more likely to visit a destination that requires masks in public. And again, that goes back to the safety as the primary concern of travelers. In short, Kentucky has what travelers are looking for when you look at all the research that's out there: outdoor activities, small communities, the opportunity to get out and not go to a place that has a large mass of people, the drivability factor, and of course what we always sell, our history, our heritage, our distilleries, our charming communities, really fit the bill. So what we have done, like many of your local CVBs and tourism commissions, we have been impacted with our revenues through COVID-19. We are primarily funded, as you know, through a 1% statewide transit room tax. And those numbers have certainly taken a hit. So we've been very conservative in our approach. When COVID first hit, we pulled all of our advertising that was in market. And keep in mind, beginning in April through now, the start of school traditionally, that is our busy season. So when the Secretary showed you those numbers about occupancy being 43.9%, I never thought I'd be excited to see a 43.9% occupancy. That's usually something that we would see maybe in a January. Normally, at this time of year, we're anywhere from 65 to 75% statewide. But with that said, we've been very conservative on what we have been doing and kind of holding on to our money. But we realize there's an opportunity now, especially for in-state travel. So we put together an ad campaign, actually launched this week on digital. Next week, you'll see it on television and radio. And let me walk you through what we're looking at. The purpose is that we want to increase in-state travel through day and week, not just weekend trips, really just all trips. And why? Because that's going to obviously lead to increased spending and tax revenue. Again, the Secretary showed you the impact on tax revenue to the state with our travel losses. We want to inspire consumers to consider a Kentucky vacation through content that highlights all there is to see and do across the state. You know, this is my second tenure here, as I think many of you know, but in between I was a local tourism director in Bardstown, Kentucky. And I can't tell you how many times I'd tell them I was from Bardstown, they'd say, my old Kentucky home, I went there when I was a kid, or I went to see the Stephen Foster story. And my question was, why don't you come back? Well, it's that same sentiment that we're trying to grab people. Say, if you've been somewhere before, come back and visit again. Or if you live in West Kentucky and have never been to the Big South Fork, or have never been to Breaks Interstate Park, or if you live in Eastern Kentucky and you've never been to Kentucky Lake or Lake Barkley, we're trying to encourage in-state travelers to visit all there is to see and do in Kentucky. And again, you see the tagline up at the top, stay close and go far. We want to remind Kentuckians that they don't have to travel far to be transported a world away. Bluegrass State is full of surprises, even to those who call it home. And you'll see a lot of that messaging. Unfortunately, in this situation, I'm not able to show you the television spot that will begin airing next week. But the campaign will include television, radio, digital, and print advertising, all in state. We are not advertising out of state at this point. And the key to this, and I heard Mr. Beck also mention this word in his remarks, the key to this campaign is going to be flexibility. We are monitoring our regional drive markets. You know, Kentucky's blessed that we border so many states and we have such large metropolitan areas to pull from, like Cincinnati, Nashville, Knoxville, Charleston, St. Louis, Memphis, Indianapolis, etc. But we're monitoring those. And for right now, for this campaign, it will only be in-state. Another part of that is we want to spend money with our in-state vendors and try to help them along. So this is the next next slide is just a sample of what it will look like. It's very simple. I know you probably can't read that. If you're on the screen, it says stay close, go far. There's a whole world waiting right here at home. In all of our images, we wanted to make sure that they were small groups, socially distanced when possible, or family groups. All of this was created with existing footage. We did not go out into the field and spend money on creating any new content for this. Again, we are monitoring this. If part of our challenge right now from a media buy is, as you know better than anyone, it's election season, and availability on especially TV and radio is going to be difficult coming up. So currently the campaign has launched and will run through the middle of October. We will continue to monitor it with a lot of NTI still going on, and if folks are continuing to telework, there may be opportunities to go into a non-traditional travel season leading up to and around the holidays. So with that, Mr. Secretary, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, I'll just conclude by saying that they tell us, the experts tell us, that the travel industry probably will not recover to pre-COVID levels until 2024. Commissioner Manship, myself, our team here, and all of our agencies under the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet are dedicated and working to make sure that our recovery comes sooner than that. Thank you for the opportunity, and we'd be happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. I've got a couple quick questions, and I know my colleagues, Representative Freeland, Representative Heath, from down in the western part of the state. As far as our camping in the state, I know in our part of the state, campers, you put one on the market, it's gone the next day. Have you all, are you all tracking that particular industry in the state? Is it the same all over the state? Is that, and I know you mentioned part of that, but just in those sales and people camping more throughout the state, are you all seeing significant increases in that?
I will let Commissioner Manship answer from a industry standpoint, but from a state park standpoint, sir, we're actually running fairly well above last year in campground income in our state parks. The Kentucky Horse Park, the parks that are part of the state's park system, et cetera, are full, and there are lines to get in.
And Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. What I can tell you is nationally, RV sales are pacing at 90. That's 90% ahead of last year. When I speak to my colleagues around the country, and even though we're competitors, we're all in the same boat, so we help each other out. I can tell you they're seeing the same thing. It's outdoor activities, people wanting to get out. Yes, campgrounds, hiking, boating. If you talk to, I was talking to one of our CVB directors down in Russell Springs, and she says you can't find a houseboat to rent right now, and they are having a great month. As a matter of fact, I believe she said that it was their best July on record. But again, I need to temper that by saying that's a big blip that I think shows the pent-up demand, but that season ends basically next week, traditionally. So you're going to see a pretty substantial drop-off there. But in short, yes, we are seeing that not only around the state, but around the country.
Okay, and a little bit of a follow-up, and I'm going to put you all on the spot a little bit, and I apologize for that, but it is something that this is an issue that is very important to our part of the state, especially related to tourism on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. And it specifically has to do with the Asian carp issue. I understand that there is the Cabinet Health and Family Services. There will be a new fee planned that will add cost onto shipping of Asian carp, and I know there's other farm products, and I know this is something that Commissioner Quarles is also looking at. But specifically in relation to the Asian carp issue, which is been somewhat devastating even before this hit to Kentucky and Barkley Lake and the surrounding communities there. Is the cabinet taking a stance on this fee in hopes of trying to get something changed with that as to ensuring that it does not have a negative impact on the efforts to maybe not eradicate Asian carp, but at least to control?
Yes, sir. We were made aware of that by one of our partners that is in the Asian carp fish processing industry in Western Kentucky along Barkley and Kentucky Lakes. I have had a conversation with Secretary for the Cabinet of Health and Family Services, Friedlander, and we're trying to gather information on that, but the Cabinet has approached the Secretary to possibly that we will go on record in the public comment period.
Very good, thank you. I have a question from Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm on your right if you need to see me. Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here with us today. In informal and public conversations, I've heard conflicting reports of who made the final decision on how the State Fair is running this year. Can you confirm or deny that the executive branch made that final decision, please?
I'm not quite sure the question, but the State Fair and the Fair Board is an agency of this cabinet, submitted to the Healthy at Work portal guidelines for having the State Fair. And the Healthy at Work Task Force, along with the cabinet, along with the Kentucky Venues Management, and ultimately the State Fair Board, all worked in tandem to address what would be the safest way to have a state fair, and received approval from the Healthy at Work Task Force, and at that point went forward with having a state fair under the restrictions that you are currently seeing.
So the executive branch made that final decision?
In conjunction with the State Fair Board did vote and had input, and it was kind of a joint effort as we went into this, is all because of the executive order about mass gatherings. Everything or all of these events that are this size in nature need to go through that review portal. Just as I could give you the horse shows at the state or at the Kentucky Horse Park, just like some of the other events that have occurred in different portions of the Commonwealth.
So it sounds like you're confirming the executive branch is the final authority on how the state fair is being run this year.
No, ma'am. I would say to you that it was kind of a team approach. I mean, the folks from the State Fair Board, the folks that are the management of the facility where it would be held, created a plan. We talked about it, guidelines that were out there from the Healthy at Work portal and for the Department of Health, et cetera, and then we applied for approval, and when we received that approval, even some of the tweakings that have occurred during this process has been at the request of the State Fair Board and the State Fair Committee.
I don't want to sound argumentative, so I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Representative Freeland.
Thank you, gentlemen, and I just want to follow up on Senator Carroll's comments on camping, especially in my district, in Danny's, we have Kentucky and Lake Barkley, and some questions I had received or suggestions I had received from people in our area is specific to Ken Lake State Resort Park in Aurora, Kentucky, and it was a question they were talking about. They have some beautiful campgrounds, but a lot of the spaces, I don't know enough about camping to probably be very knowledgeable on this, but the campground spots, the spaces they have allocated are smaller, older size, and the hookups don't accommodate the newer modern style of campers. And they said there's a lot of unusable, beautiful campgrounds that aren't being used, and it seems like if we could find some money to update those, it would be a revenue enhancer for that area. But thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir. I would just respond by saying I'm not personally aware of Ken Lake, but I recently completed a visit to Kentucky Dam Village State Resort Park, and they have a campground there that has some similar issues. Apparently, due to flooding, it has rendered several of the hookups electrically unusable, and those who approve electric work that is done say that they can't just be fixed; they need to be replaced and upgraded. Again, I'm not an RV user or a camper, but I believe they require 50 amp. But regardless, we know that there are spots that do require an upgrade if we're going to make use of all of them. Again, those are on deferred maintenance lists for the Department of Parks, but certainly this is part of if camping is going to be the growing area, we need to make changes so that we can maximize all of those spaces, just as we did at the Kentucky Horse Park in Lexington. By making some upgrades to that, we were able to get to 100% occupancy.
Representative Fugate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Secretary Berry, please. Secretary Berry, in the 84th District, which is Perry and half of Harlan, this month we had a group come in that race with a group called the Rally Racers, rally race car events that they usually go to the state of New York and have rallies. And are you familiar with that type of racing?
Vaguely, because of an event that was occurring near one of our state parks called what we call Kingdom Come. It's
yes, sir.
A little separate of Kingdom Come.
Yes, sir. Okay, that park is in my district, Kingdom Come State Park.
Yes, sir.
Because of that first event here in this month of August, they brought 16 cars, 16 racers. The value of the race cars went from $25,000 up to one man said he had like $1 million in his car, which is unbelievable. But Representative Hatton, Representative Boland, and I, and the local county judges and magistrates were up there watching. And just for those 16 cars, it brought in a lot of people in that filled up all the Airbnbs, the small motels in about 3 counties. It really brought in a lot of revenue into southeast Kentucky, which is greatly needed. So because of that, they're looking to come back September the 17th and 18th, or 18th and 19th of next month, and they want to bring 70 cars, which would, and now these folks are from different countries. They were there from Ireland and all over the world, really. But they're looking to bring up to 70 cars, and then they're looking to hold 2 to 4 rallies there in southeast Kentucky, Letcher County, Harlan County, in different counties throughout the year, which would bring a lot of people, a lot of tourists into southeast Kentucky. those events that are coming up, is that something that you as the Secretary of Tourism could help us get behind and try to bring those folks into Southeast Kentucky? It would really be a great economic boost for our local businesses and our local motels and hotels and all that. And I just was wondering if that's something that we could meet together and talk to the organizers of the event and try to make sure that that happens for us in Southeast Kentucky.
Yes, Representative, definitely, we would be happy, myself, and also get some of the park staff to meet, and some of the staff from Commissioner Manchett's department because of the promotion for this. I am familiar with the event that occurred previously. We've gotten a couple of calls here in the office. Overwhelming approval, but a couple of calls in the office have been concerned about environmental impact. And in fact, I was on KET Tonight a few weeks ago, and one of the callers in was concerned about that same thing. The event that took place, as I understand it, and I had a meeting on this last week, as I understand it, the event that took place before involved the county road that travels the perimeter of the park. The proposed events would actually involve some of the park roads and therefore might change the logistics a little bit in terms of use of the park. So what we would like to do, and I really welcome your suggestion that we have a meeting to discuss it, because we just want to make sure that the park isn't completely blocked from individuals that want to use it to hike and et cetera. And while we're not opposed to using it for events like this, we want to make sure there's still opportunity as well for local individuals and visitors to access the park on busy weekends. So yes, a conversation would be much appreciated.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir, that is correct. If I remember right, the part that they ran on was Little Shepherd Trail, and it was given to the county, or the county assumed responsibility for it years ago. The other section, I think that they want to use the 18th and 19th of September has not been given over to the county yet. But I think they would gladly take it, just like they did the other section of Little Shepherd Trail. I think it's called Layton Trail, and I may be wrong on that, but I think it's right. And they would only want to use that or close it down for like 6 or 8 hours on one Saturday, so it's not like it would be closed for 2 or 3 days. But yeah. If we could get together and meet on that soon, just because we've got a lot of planning to do. There's already people that's registering, these drivers are registering from out of the country to come to Southeast Kentucky the 18th and 19th. And so I'll get with your office and we'll set a meeting up as soon as we can so we can try to push this forward. I appreciate it.
That sounds good. And yes, I know that it's on the radar screen through the park manager of the Department of Parks, another one of our agencies. So we'll get them involved as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'm sure that's an interesting event, kind of a big deal these days, so I'm sure a lot of growth potential in that event. Co-Chair Weber.
Secretary Berry, thank you for being with us today remotely. I want to follow back around for a moment and hit on a line of questioning that Representative King had. And I'm going to ask the question this way. Whose idea was it to have no spectators at the Kentucky State Fair this year?
To my knowledge, it was the recommendation of the management of the State Fair Board, the management of Kentucky venues in conjunction with the Kentucky State Fair Board and the Cabinet. Because that was the plan that was ultimately submitted for approval.
That initial plan called for no spectators.
Sir, I'm not sure if the initial plan called for no spectators, and in fact, I'm questioning my own memory here because days seem like months. But I believe the initial plan did not, but that the plan was changed and represented to the portal. Not, and I would just tell you personally, not at my suggestion, but with my support.
I lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we did not hear that last statement that you made.
Okay, what I said, to my knowledge, to my knowledge, that the submission to the portal was changed to exclude spectators, not at my request, but with my support.
Will you have the documentation that outlines what was submitted and the modifications that took place in that process regarding the various decisions, including no spectators at the State Fair? Do you have that information? The reason I'm asking, I'll go ahead, is I would like for you to provide that to this committee. I would like to see that timeline. We have to make that through open records request. I'll be happy to do that. But I certainly would like to see that information and that timeline.
I believe I have copies of those. Just as a point, I do not serve as a member of the Healthy at Work Task Force, so I would have been copied on the submissions, but I would not have seen them as they were submitted to the portal.
Will you forward to myself and Co-Chair Carroll and Co-Chair Pratt that information that you have?
Yes, sir. I will check and see what information that we have.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, I think we have someone in the audience. Sir, if you would please identify yourself. Did you have something that you wanted to add to this? Yeah, can't hear you, sir. Is the mic activated?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I am the new chairman of the Kentucky State Fair Board. I'm Steve Wilson. And I wanted to interject because there seems to be a lot of speculation about this, and it's not that difficult, really. A plan to limit the fair had already been made before I was chairman. So and I don't have, as far as open records, I'd be glad to give you, but I don't have dates. But before I was made chairman, the fair had already been limited. The Farm Bureau breakfast, the country ham sale, the 4-H and FFA youth ham festival, all those things had already been canceled. And if you remember, over 23 state fairs around the country had been canceled completely, including all of our neighboring states. And so there was a great concern about the health of not only the public, but the staff here. And so there were three options. One was to cancel the fair. One was to go forward without a general admission, and one was to continue with the plan. I met with David Beck and his operations staff. The operations staff recommended the plan that we're under now, unanimously. There wasn't an official vote, but as the new chairman, facing, a fair that I had certainly wasn't planning, I asked for their advice and I recommended to the governor the current plan. I was concerned about having the fair at all. But now that I've been here and walked among the farmers, the 4-H'ers, the FFA kids, the horse show people, I'm really glad we did. Those people are very happy and appreciative of being able to be here. But as I think you know, because you came today, we've been very careful about the health and welfare of everybody on the grounds. We take the temperatures at the gate. Everyone's wearing an armband if they pass their temperature test, even I. So we're doing the best we can. under the circumstances.
Co-Chair Weber, do you have any follow-up, sir?
I'm good. I'm just going to anticipate, and I would like to see that documentation. Mr. Wilson, whatever you have available, if you would forward it to each of the co-chairs as well, I would appreciate that.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that.
Co-Chair Pratt?
Mr. Wilson, a couple of questions. Who made you chairman of the Fair Board?
Governor Bashir.
Okay, so you make sure I understand what you said was you made the decision by yourself to hold the fair as we're seeing it today. Is that correct, without the full vote of the Fair Board?
Well, there was not a vote. We were under pressure to make a decision because of all the contracts. There wasn't time really to have another Fair Board meeting at the time.
So it's a yes.
Yes, I recommended, based on the operations people of the Fair Board, of the people who work here. They're the professionals, and they recommended that we take the plan we're in now.
But the answer is the Fair Board did not take
The Fair
a full
Board
vote.
did not vote. But I
Thanks,
called
sir.
each member of the Fair Board on the day that it was announced, and no one disagreed with the decision to me, to my face.
Sir, is that proper under the bylaws for the Fair Board?
I felt it was the right thing to do.
Sir, I didn't ask what you felt. I asked if that was proper under the bylaws for the Fair Board.
I don't have the bylaws in front of me, but as I said, I made the decision as opposed to closing the fair entirely, which of course all our neighboring states have done.
Does anyone else have questions? Senator Thomas?
If I may, and tell me your name again, sir.
Steve Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson. What has been your reception since the fair has gone on, has been open? What has been the reception you received from the public with the fair being open? Could you share that with us, please?
Well, as I said, I've been here every single day, and all the people who are exhibiting are very appreciative of having the fair and being able to compete. All these young people who have been raising their animals all year. I was a 4-H'er when I was a kid. So it's very important to the farm families that we have some semblance of the fair, that they all got to compete. Tonight we're going to have the wonderful parade of the champions of all these kids and their animals. The horse show is, as you heard from Mr. Beck, it's not as well attended as it was before, but we have about 1,400 horses here. And they're competing we're following the most stringent guidelines of horse associations. We're following the USEF guidelines as far as having a healthy horse show. So as I said, the people who are here are very happy to be here. And I've had emails and notes from other people who think we made the right decision.
2 quick follow-ups, please, Mr. Wilson. One, the fair's been open now for how many days?
I'm sorry?
How long has the fair been open? Are you in your 10th day, 11th day?
I think it's the 9th day.
Have you had any COVID cases thus far?
Not that I know of.
Thank you, sir.
Any other members have a question? Representative Roberts?
Thank you. Thank you. Is it Mr. Wilson? I'm sorry. Your name again? I'm sorry.
My name is Steve Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Could you let me know, I was in a meeting earlier today and we talked about how people could observe the fair online tonight. So can you talk some about that so that people who aren't able to be here in person can perhaps watch that parade you mentioned this evening?
I'm afraid I don't have a lot of personal information about that. I know it's being done, and it's the first time that we've ever done that. I'm sorry, I don't have any more information about that.
That's okay. That's all right. I wrote it down from the earlier meeting, so I'll make sure I share it. It's kystatefair.org. So if anyone does want to watch that tonight, you can do so at kystatefair.org. Thank you for your team for making that available to the public.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Brown? It's the profile of a person to the right of the microphone. Could someone assist?
Hello. Okay, I got it.
There you go.
Thank you. This is my third meeting of the day, and I just want to make this statement for the record. This is the third time that there are questions about the State Fair and its opening and who made the decision. I think that there's a concern for me that there seems to be a concerted effort to point fingers and to place ridicule. I think in this pandemic of 2020, I think prudence was enhanced and taken, and the safety of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the visitors to the Commonwealth of Kentucky was taken into consideration. I think that what is going on does not appear to be something that is relative and or prudent in thinking in terms of our questioning the State Fair being open and the public being open to the public. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Brown. Mr. Wilson, one final question for you. When you were made chair of the board by the governor, was there any discussion or any instructions related to guests being at the fair on what the governor's expectations or request was? You said no?
No.
So no conversations between you and the governor or anyone in his staff related to that?
Well, I did relate to the governor that I had fears that we might need to close the fair. But it wasn't, as you asked the question, I thought no. I did suggest that was a possibility, but it wasn't a prerequisite of my being appointed chair, if that's what you're asking.
Was there any discussion about that prior to you being appointed chair?
No, sir, there was not.
Very good, thank you. Appreciate your additions to this discussion. Any other members? Representative Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me, I just want to make a comment. I think that we all realize that, you know, we are in a pandemic and decisions have to be made, and someone has to be in authority to make those decisions. And we recognize that. We actually have laws on the books that allow that for states of emergencies and that sort of thing. But I think that one of the things that some of us seem to be concerned about is that decisions that are made that shuts down schools, the economy, all types of events like this. We all know that they're sometimes not very popular, and I understand that. But the person who claims to be responsible, that's their job. They ran for that office, and certainly they need to make those decisions. But when they make those decisions, I want them to stand up in front of Kentucky and say, this was my decision, and I made that. And I just want to make sure that it kind of bothers all of us when someone who doesn't want to take that responsibility and say, this was my decision, the buck stops here. I just want to make sure those people aren't putting people in control of different groups and organizations that make those decisions, and making sure that when they do that, they are stacking those boards and commissions with people that they know who are going to follow what really is their decision. But they're giving them an out to say that, well, that really wasn't my decision. This was made by the Fair Board, or this was made by Department of Education, or we're going to allow the Department of Education to maybe have some say over the KHSAA or whatever. And I just think that, if you're going to make a decision, you're the leader of this state, man up and tell us what your decisions are, and don't try to work in an underhanded way and force that decision to boards or commissions that you may already have control of. Thank you.
Next, we have Representative Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have if you'll allow me, please, I just have a quick comment to Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, I'm Representative Gentry. I am from Louisville and represent district in South Louisville, and I should say Louisville. Personally, I want to thank you for taking the leadership role in a very difficult situation and making a hard decision. And I want to thank you for making the right decision. As a resident of this city, I appreciate your decision, and I just want to thank you for making the right decision. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, if we have no other questions, I think we're going to move on. Mr. Secretary, Commissioner Manjit, thank you all both for being here. I wish during the governor's daily updates, it seems that the governor spends so much time telling our residents what they can't do. It would be refreshing if perhaps maybe you all would appear on the daily press conference and maybe talk about what people can do in the state as far as camping and outdoor activities and some of the success there. I think our people need to hear some positive messages for a change. So thank you both for being here and appreciate your work.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, the final presentation on the agenda is from the Economic Development Cabinet. I think we have the Secretary, General Counsel, and Commissioner, and I will let you all introduce yourselves for the record. And Mr. Secretary, you have the floor. Is everyone there?
Yes, I believe so, sir.
Please proceed, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and fellow committee members. I know it's probably been a long day for you all. We do have some positive news. This morning we had our Kentucky Joint Development Finance Authority meeting, and we've got a few exciting projects that you'll be reading about in the future. So, you know, obviously we've all been, am I still on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my computer was showing a different slide. Anyway, we obviously have gone through a difficult time in the business world. And, you know, it's really, we've been looking forward. We've been taking the opportunity to be able to find out what it's like to really do the job that the governor has asked us to do and that we are doing for the people of the Commonwealth. And using new tools and new skills. And, you know, our day is different now. Most of our people in compliance with the governor's healthy at work and healthy at home, most of our people are working remotely. What we have found, our people are very capable of continuing to be very productive. One of the interesting things I've found, not to belabor this, but I was probably the least thrilled with the fact that we were going to be doing Team and Zoom and Blue Jeans and all these different platforms that I frankly had never heard of, and I'm very much a people person like many of you all, obviously when you ran for office. But I have found out I'm not the only one out there like that. I am able to pick up the phone and call, and I'm talking to the top executives with some of the other companies all over the world, or we're Zooming, and it's just them sitting there in their home offices, the same as we are. And sooner or later, you know, we end up not talking about just the business, but we're talking about things that are of interest to both of us, about how the rest of the world or the other state is coping with some of the same issues, because we're all having the same problems, which is kind of makes it unique. It's not one state that's impacted by this, it's the whole country. And then it's almost the whole world. And it's allowed us to have relationships with people and an index and a Rolodex that we really couldn't have had before when we're calling, trying to make appointments and going through 3 or 4 different people. Now, the downside of that is there are an awful lot of people all the way around that have your own personal number, and they call at different time zones and different times of day and night. You do learn to work differently. But I assure you that we have been looking forward. We're very positive. I'll let Commissioner Taylor talk in a minute just about, he's in charge of business development, and we've got some slides that'll show you where we've been. You look at the total announcements for the first 7 months. the total announcements, or the total announcements that we've had year over year. Obviously, you see the drop off. But what's really important in this business is the pipeline that we have. And we've got some really exciting projects that we continue to work with. Many of them are foreign direct investment projects. Some of you all may or may not know that, in Kentucky, the national average for foreign direct investments is something like, I had the number here now, the newest number just came out. Uh, we are at almost 8%, and the rest of the nation is something less than 5%. So we have a tremendous uh, legacy, really, with foreign investment locating here and growing here. And as you'll see in a slide when we get up to it with the existing businesses and the growth, that's when we bring a project in, and it may be small initially, we have a really, really good record and those businesses growing. Uh, we don't just focus on going after the biggest ones. Obviously, we are in the market for those, but I think we've got a cabinet, and Jeff, you might want to mention when you get in there about the webinars that our people are doing and the different business sectors that we are developing expertise in and looking for new ways to be able to communicate literally with people around the world, certainly in the business community in the U.S., because the old way of communicating and just advertising and doing business the way you've typically done, because we're a sales-oriented organization. The old way of doing that is not the way you're going to reach them in the future. And Tony, we've got some exciting things going on in the entrepreneurship area, and I know you're going to be pushed for time, so I want to, Jeff, you might want to talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what our development opportunities look like for the future, and tell them a little about yourself, your background. I know many of them know you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. I'm Jeff Taylor. I came on board with the cabinet back in January. I was once among your race, spent a brief time representing House District 8, but I have 35 years experience in economic development. The bulk of that time was with TVA. And the majority of my life, I've just been a salesman, but I've sold the TVA region is a good place to do business. And I'm doing that now for the state. I'm a native of Kentucky. I'm from Central City, Muhlenberg County. I have family and friends here that need good jobs, so I'm very passionate about what I do. As Larry said, we're a sales force, and that's the approach that I've taken with the cabinet. We've geared up to get more proactive on going after leads. Generally, at any state entity, we wait around for site consultants to bring us leads, and that's absolutely fine. We continue to do that, but we also want to generate our own leads. We have project managers. Some of you maybe have sat in on some of the presentations. They also have target markets, and what we expect them to do is to actually be very knowledgeable in that target. It's not just enough to say that you do automotive or that you do food and beverage or that you do metals. You need to be an expert on that subject matter. Know what drives it, be able to train the communities on what they need to do to become attractive to those specific markets. Some of you may have heard that Tesla was looking. We were slightly criticized for not going after Tesla. However, nothing could be farther from the truth. We created a state-of-the-art website for Tesla, specifically for them in their own font. But when we created it, the initiative was to make it where we could quickly change it and go after any automotive OEM. And we've already done that once, going after a bus manufacturer. We also are marketing to states that are not manufacturing friendly. We currently have a California campaign where we'll go after specific companies and it's yielding results. It's not cold calling. It leads to warm calling. Then we'll follow up with an email that will take them to a specific landing page just for them. And we'll also connect them to that specific project manager in that target and also lead them to a recording of their PowerPoint presentation. So I'm real happy about the direction we're going. In spite of that and the pandemic and all that we ran into that slowed us down a tad, I'm still happy to announce that from January to July of this year, we've had 61 new expansions and our locations that we assisted with. that we assisted our local communities and power partners with. This led to the creation of nearly 3,314 jobs and leveraged or created $1.18 billion in capital investment. If you're following along with the slides, if you look at total announcements, you'll see that from January to July of this year, that everything is off approximately 1/3 as compared to 2019, where we had 61 projects. In 19, there were 95. And you'll see about the same ratio, about 1/3 for jobs created. And then also in the investment, where we're 1.18 billion, where it was in 2019, 2.52 billion. I am presently surprised. I know these numbers are not what any of us want them to be, but honestly, when this pandemic set in and people couldn't travel in for overseas for FDI or even from neighboring states, I really thought it would be a lot worse. I truly think that if the pandemic had not have set in, that we would be breaking records right now as far as capital investment and jobs created. The next slide, as usual, you'll see that existing industries lead the way and expansions. That's generally where the bulk of your new jobs will always come from. However, you will see that on the far right, that the bulk of jobs this time with the pandemic, which is a nice surprise, actually came from new locations versus the existing industry expansions. We have had various training sessions, I think a total of 21, dealing with everything from Salesforce to finance. We have a young staff outside of Corky Peak in the West. Our senior staff person is a project manager, who's only been on board for 2 years. We've had about 22 calls with virtual communities. Those are Zoom calls and conference calls. We have also met with all of the major railroad providers, some of the short line providers, all of the major airports, and we are also meeting further. In the future, we're planning meetings with the river ports. So we want to be very active and we want to be very visible in your communities. We have future presentations coming up. I hope that some of you will join us on the webinar. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, and secretary.
Thank you, Jeff. And on those webinars, we have 3 of them completed now, and they're up on our website. So you might want to take a look at that, both for the information and frankly, the quality of the work that was done by the project managers. They practiced, and, you know, I am very proud of them. And Jeff was talking about with the existing industries, you know, our challenge now is, because it is a new world, all the businesses are beginning to look internally at where they're going to make their investments and their reinvestments. And they're also looking at, because this world that we're in now, parts of it are still going to be around. They're looking at how they're sourcing their supplies now. There are a lot of opportunities, and we're trying to do a lot of intelligent research, business research, to be able to locate opportunities that Jeff can turn around and go after. Jeff, so I'm proud of you. The industry, you see the breakdown on industries. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to have them. It's just a snapshot in time right now. I don't know that there's anything in particular that we can make any judgments about at all. It's a pretty normal breakdown for us. The impacts of COVID, on the next slide, I hardly know what to say, because when I look at this and I read in the paper that our unemployment rate is 5%, you look at this, it's maybe 5.8% or something like that. And yet the figure that's more important to me is, you know, in July, let's see, Kentucky's employment was 1.7 million in July of 2020. You compare that to January of 2020, it was 2 million. Now that's the relevant number. The Bureau of Labor Statistics and the way that they come up with these unemployment rates it's always confused me over the years that I've been there. You know, when they make the adjustments that they make, and if it makes any sense, I ask our people, I said, why would that most reasonable people would think our unemployment rate's a lot higher than that? Well, one of the things that they found out was receiving benefits from the unemployment insurance program has no bearing on whether a person is classified as unemployed. So it is, we are in strange times. So the more important takeaway, I think, from this is the direction we're heading and the opportunities that we see ahead. There are some sectors that we are really, really excited about. One of them is on the entrepreneurial side, the small business side. Maybe Tony Ellis, our general counsel, will tell you a little about himself and a little about what we're doing quickly. Tony, you there?
Larry, do you want me to handle this slide? Well, hello, everybody. My name is Andy Ellis. I am the general counsel for the Cabinet for Economic Development. I also am the legislative liaison for the cabinet. In that role, I've met most of you during the last session, although we had a shortened session and we weren't present as much. I try to at least interact with everybody. I think I've met the vast majority of those of you that are here today. For those that I haven't, I'm going to try to reach out and meet you before the next session. But for anybody that has worked with us before, I think they would say that our cabinet is very responsive. We try to get information to you, and I'm very reachable if you need something or you need to talk about something. A new role that I've picked up that I am extremely excited about is as the acting director of something called Kentucky Innovation, which is Cabinet's small business, startup, and entrepreneur support organization. There is an incredible amount of energy and enthusiasm in the community right now for the positive things we can do to help basically pull the economy out of its economic downturn. Throughout the past, 3 or 4 economic recessions, study after study has shown that it's really been small businesses and or that drive that growth. Some because they want to become small business people, and some because they have to become entrepreneurs. And in that capacity, and one of the things I think Chairman Carroll noted, there needs to be some good news. We are, in fact, some of the good news the governor has delivered during the press conferences over the past couple of months. We've had 2 programs that have been announced, and we're pretty excited about these programs. They're public-private partnerships that have really already shown some good progress, and that we think we're going to have really good results about in the future. The first are the RISE offices. I think that's the slide that's up there right now. One of the discussions that I've had with members of the committees that are here today and representatives and legislators are, what can we do to provide more resources for the entrepreneur communities, not just in Louisville and Lexington, which are important and critical sectors for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but how do we make sure that that same excitement, energy, and resource application exists in Paducah or Pikeville or anywhere else around the Commonwealth? So the RISE program has been one of the key drivers for that. We established 6 regional entrepreneur support initiatives. There's one in Blue North in Covington, Amplify in Louisville, Grow West, which is the new brand for Western Kentucky's entrepreneurial support region, Brick and Bowling Green, which is with Jeff Hook and really that they have down there, Awesome Inc. in Lexington, and Soar in Pikeville. And unfortunately, this map, we didn't have enough time to add the additional dots, but while they're based in these 6 regions, these 6 cities, they're really spread out throughout the region. For example, Grow West has a presence not just in Paducah, but in Mary State and in Hopkinsville and Madisonville. And I think there's some initiative to try to do more in Henderson as well. Crick and Bowling Green is also covering P-Town. We have an office and a person in Elizabethtown. And with Soar and Pikeville, they actually have offices. I apologize. I can't, I believe it's Moorhead, EKU, and Somerset or Manchester. Manchester is another one where they've got an active presence and we're on the ground. But the other thing that's happened through this virtual world that we live in is we've been promoting, and the regional offices have really embraced the collective Team Kentucky approach, where they are sharing best practices from leads, from resources, from knowledge. If they've got a coding school in Amplify, they're going to put that out to Paducah and make it available to them. And that's a central tenet of, I think, the program and the philosophy that we've been driving, which is we're all together. And we have to make sure that these resources and best practices can get around the state rapidly and efficiently. And the second program that we've put together, Kentucky Commercialization Ventures, which we're really excited about. First of its kind in the nation, multi-party tech transfer office. So we're making IP instruction and research and market analysis available to every institute of higher education and the technical and community colleges in the state, and hiring a full-time IP attorney to provide those needs. We're setting legal clinics and supporting existing legal clinics to be able to provide more resources to small businesses and entrepreneurs, and really trying to promote the research to revenue model. And I can talk a lot more about these programs. I know it's the end of the day. I know that we're the last on the agenda. I will say one of the instructions that we got from the governor and the governor's team was essentially we need to be working across cabinets and across the Commonwealth to make sure that we don't have 3 people doing the same job essentially in 3 different cabinets, that we're really focusing on programs that we're training communities that traditionally may be under-resourced or underutilized, like rural parts of Kentucky, some of our poor communities. You've always heard the phrase, ability is everywhere, opportunity is limited. We really believe that to our core of how do we promote opportunities, and from everywhere from Paducah to Pikeville, how do we make sure that our really, the future creator of Google is identified and provided the resources that they need to succeed. And the other side of that is data tracking tools. I don't want to just say to you, I'm really excited about this and we're going to have these great results. We're really trying to put in place a rigorous and comprehensive data and metric approach so that we're setting key targets in all of our programs and saying, this is what we expect you to accomplish in 6 months or a year. And if you're on track or off track, we want to be aware of that and involved early. Now, an example of that is we just submitted a grant, went through the Academy for Economic and Workforce Development, but it was a multi-party grant collaboration between our cabinet, Council for Post-Secondary Education, the regional RISE offices, KSDC, every public university, for a grant through the Department of Education for $15 to $20 million, so $5 to $7 million a year over 3 years, to basically set up small business incubators around the state. And this initiative basically happened over 2 weeks. People worked around the clock, a number of people from the cabinet, a number of people from the other cabinets, basically worked nonstop for 2 weeks to get the grant application in. We got letters of support from pretty much every member of the federal delegation, multiple businesses, the university presidents. And if we get this grant, we think it's going to be a really, really exciting thing that can move Kentucky forward and provide needed resources for small businesses. And if we don't get the grant, collaboration, we said, well, how can we do this in a streamlined way to get the program started and prove it out and start showing results to the legislators, so then we can come back to you and say, hey, this is something that's really going to drive jobs and growth and value. And this is how much we think we can do it for. We've all the excess off of it. This is the bare bones version. This is what we think we can do, and we're going to be sustainable in 3 years through community support and corporate giving. That's something we're really excited about. So that's generally the small business and entrepreneurship thing, Kentucky Ventures, and Kentucky Innovation. And if you guys have any questions or anybody wants to know anything more, I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Tony, thanks. We'll let Commissioner Smith just handle the last 2 or 3 real quickly, Katie, since it's not a budget request time. Our biggest, to frame it up, I mean, that's the biggest unknown for all of us right now. So as you can tell in the cabinet, we've not tried to even replace some people that are there. And the complement that you see is less really than would be ideal to do the job that we are planning on doing. But given the unknown with where we're going to find ourselves on the revenue side and the challenges that you and the governor are going to have to be able to put together a budget, we're trying to do the job and hold in place in terms of expenditures. Katie, you want to take off? Tell them a little about yourself. You've been there a long time.
I worked with you before. Thank you. My name's Katie Smith. I'm the commissioner of our Department for Financial Services, and I've been with the cabinet for over 16 years. In our group, what we do is we do the incentive program administration, and we are staffed to the Kentucky Economic Development Finance Authority Board that approves almost all the incentive programs. And then we also are staffed to the Bluegrass State Skills Corporation Board that approves some of the training grants. And then additionally, since we do the program administration, I also have the compliance division, because once they get approved, we do monitor the projects and make sure that they uphold their end of the bargain. And so then if they don't, then they may get penalized or may have to have a reduction in their tax credits that they may be eligible for. Also, the secretary was talking about our personnel. I have the personnel, our IT, as well as the accounting. And so we did want to just provide you kind of with a snapshot of our expenditures for from last year, the budget versus actual. You'll see the biggest difference is that in the grant section, we did not spend all of the funds, but we do have carry forward because our programs, especially our training grants, what they do is once they're approved, they have at least 1 year, or 12 months to actually provide the training. And so that's why we do have to have carry forward for some of our programs. And we had about $6.5 million of those funds carry forward and another $2 million carry forward for some of the entrepreneurship programs. And then our last slide also just kind of shows you the budget that you all provided for us for the current fiscal year. And we want to be prudent and stick with that and do everything we can to administer all of our programs and not spend as much money as we have to. So,
You know, that is the side of our house that really, they're the unsung heroes, because you don't read about them. You don't read about the projects that we incented and the people haven't done what they said they were going to do and what they agreed to. And, you know, you see that in a lot of states, and to Katie and the people over there, to their credit. And we just haven't had those issues. Every year she gets audited, and Katie's biggest, her biggest takeaway every time is, I don't want to have any audit exceptions. So she does a great job. There's a lot of tension sometimes between Jeff and Tony, who keep wanting to move in the other direction more rapidly with more resources. And Katie keeps everything straight. But anyway, it's a great team over there. You only see a few of us. I hope we're going to be in front of you telling you about a lot more success in the future. I'm very optimistic about it. It's hard to read where the economy is right now. Moody Analytics, you know, the Moody's, the rating agency, they put out a bulletin that they call Back to Normal Index. And they just put one out the middle of August, and Kentucky is number 19. They come up with a percentage of normal, which is a comparison between what your economy used to be pre-COVID. And, you know, they're saying we're at 83%. I mean, you'd have to look at it and go through the factors that they use. But Katie, we might send that to all the members, because it is interesting reading. And when you're thinking about at least somebody who's in the business, and when you look at the cast of characters and their sources that they're using to come up with it, it is a thoughtful look at each individual state and what they might be expecting. So we're excited about it. Mr. Chairman, thanks for your patience, and we'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I've got a question from Senator Schroeder, and the question has to do with your position. Do you plan on being the permanent secretary, or is there a process in place? And if so, where does that stand?
Well, I'm hoping he was wanting me to say yes, but no, the answer is, it's unusual times. When the governor asked me, I was going to be the interim secretary. The governor, to his credit, has been very engaged at every step of the way with us, with everything else going on. He's made a lot of calls for different prospects and so forth. He's been a good partner. We have not stopped long enough to be able, I'm treating it like I'm going to be there, but I'm not going to be the permanent secretary. And, you know, the governor never intended me for it to be that way, but we just haven't gotten to a place where we can begin a process. And I, frankly, haven't had a discussion with the governor in 2 or 3 months about it with everything else going on.
Very good, sir.
And I don't think we're losing any ground, to tell you the truth, with the staff that we have in place. He asked me to put good people there, and I think we have a pretty good team in place, so they'll serve you well in the future.
Very good. Representative Brenda has a question. He would like to ask Commissioner Taylor if the increase in jobs at existing locations is temporarily related to COVID, or are those permanent expansions?
Those are permanent expansions that would actually went through the approval process of CAFTA for their incentives. Again, I do think those numbers would be higher. Of course, they had to adhere to the same social distancing and protocols that all of us did. But those are FTJs, full-time jobs that were approved through the CAFTA process.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Representative Sheldon, I think, is online. Are you there, Representative?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Really, I wanted to ask a question. Maybe it should be for Mr. Hayes and possibly Mr. Ellis. But before I say that, Mr. Ellis, I had a great experience working with you last year, and just wanted to know that, you know, just glad to see you're there. I mean, glad to see you're getting after it, and you said you would. And boy, this KCV looks impressive. So.
You know, I never thought I'd work in government, but it turns out to be the most fun job I've ever had.
Well,
so far.
We appreciate what you're doing. So, yeah, I really just want to kind of get to a question again. It may be more for Mr. Hayes, but my question is that I just got through hearing that Mr. Hayes has, you know, worked with Governor Beshear, and he's a very good partner, and that has been very engaged in the economic development workforce cabinet. And then I also, before that, and there's a question right here, and y'all can decide who answers it. But before that, we also heard testimony from Mr. Wilson about the fair and about how all the states around us were closing down their fairs, but yet people came together and made a plan. Mr. Beck and the board of the fair, as well as the cabinet, everybody put a plan together and submitted it to the governor, I think is the way I understood it. And eventually we ended up opening up the fair when everybody else around us closed. And so I see that process, and I saw how good it worked, because it doesn't seem like anybody is regretting opening the fair up. It seems like it's a great idea. So that being said, my question is, this type of arrangement where the experts, you know, it was said several times, you know, they went to the fair board, they went to all the people that really understood it, came up with the way it should be and could be, and then eventually talked to the cabinet and then submitted it to the governor for approval. Did this type of arrangement happen when the governor was shutting down our businesses? Because workforce development is not only developing our economy, but we're also dealing with an economy that's taken a big blow. So I'd like to know if that type of process went on with this cabinet when the governor was making choices to shut down businesses. We would hear that other states did it, but clearly other states didn't have a fair and we did. So I'd like to know that this whole process went. So could somebody clear that up and let me know it did happen?
I don't know in terms of the cabinet. The cabinet wasn't involved. I'm familiar with the process. I'm familiar with it from the standpoint of having an interest in a business. So the business had to submit their plan. One of the things I think that's happened, the governor issued guidelines. They came up with guidelines for how you could operate by business sectors. Whether you can operate that way or not is up to you. Oftentimes people didn't want to be able to make that decision themselves. They wanted to be told they can or they can't.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, that could be up for discussion, but
Excuse
So are
me?
you telling me that your cabinet was not consulted during that, and that your cabinet was not consulted? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, we were consulted from the standpoint, and I was on the phone with any number of mainly manufacturers who were calling me wanting to be considered at the very beginning essential. And you know, whether you were essential or not, nobody had ever done this before. So,
Oh,
you
I
know,
understand all that. I'm just trying to figure out whether you talked to the governor and the governor talked to you and you all came together and
the governor
made
solicited,
recommendations.
our opinion. I had several conversations before we all got, you know, sent home, so to speak. And then I've had communications anytime I need to on behalf of companies that call me, uh, making the case for why they needed to be essential, let's say. And I make that case. Now, the decision on essential was the very first decision that was made. And by and large, they were really pretty good decisions as far as I know, because a lot of those companies that were left open became part of the solution. They became part of manufacturing PPE. They were really, and they're leading the way in creating the PPE that allowed other small businesses to be able to open. You know, so they became essential. We didn't know that at the time, but yes, the voice of business was at the table.
Sure, the voice of business was at the table, and I agree. I don't disagree with essential versus non-essential. You went a lot of places that I really wasn't asking the question about, because I think me and you are probably on the same page on a lot of this. But what I wanted to know is that we had looked like what a great process had happened, described about the fair, and I thought, well, you know, that certainly is the way it seems like it should have happened through the workforce development, where you actually worked with other industries, which you did, and then you submitted protocol to the governor, and then he made the decisions to either shut them down or not shut them down based on information he received from your cabinet. That would have been, I would have thought, the way to go, but apparently that is not the way it went.
Well, ultimately the decider, every decision in this particular circumstance was decided based upon the best advice of the people, with health being the number one consideration.
But so who made the decision?
Well, you know, Dr. Stack and his people were really ultimately the ones. The governor was going to rely on the expert medical advice and so forth. But he certainly,
your cabinet wasn't consulted about it then.
Excuse me?
We were.
What I'm looking at.
I can answer this a little bit. Katie, can we go back to the slide on PPE?
Okay, Tony, we're gonna need to hurry. We're running out of time.
Oh, sorry, Senator.
You're okay.
I'll be super quick. The short version is, yes, we absolutely were involved in those discussions. But it really breaks down into time period. So in March, when everything broke, number one thing that our cabinet did more than anything else was we became integral in trying to identify and work with our businesses to retool to make PPE. And I know March feels like forever ago, but that was our number one thing. We had a 60-person team dedicated to working with Kentucky companies. I mean, I can give you so many different examples. We were trying to make gowns out of bale wrapper at one point because in March and April, there was no way to get it. And the healthcare CEOs came to us and said, we are desperate and we don't have anything. And so we basically became the vetting agency for the millions of leads that were coming in that were phony and fraudulent. And we built a team, and then we were in regular calls with the different chambers of commerce, with Ashley Watts, with you know, GLI, with CAM. I personally was on most of those calls where we were talking to them almost daily at one point, right? And that was sort of the March, April period as we were starting to just get through the crisis. And we were also in regular communications with the National Governors Association, getting feedback on what other states were doing, and also with Indiana and Ohio trying to figure out what they were doing. And in that process, it all blended together. We were talking about what types of businesses could open safely, leaning heavily on Dr. Stack and the public health people, but also talking directly to the felt safe with and what they could do, and also the critical things that we needed to make. I mean, we needed to make, at that point, face shields and masks. So there were regular continuous discussions where we were consulting with them about the different impacts and opportunities and ways that we could move forward. But those were definitely heavily relied upon by Dr. Stack and the public health crisis.
Okay, I'll end with this. I thank you very much. I always knew you were going to be a fighter for the businesses. This question was never about that, and I don't want you to think I doubt you all, what you all do and what you don't do. Matter of fact, I think you're great. My question still wasn't answered, but that's okay. That's not your fault. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Secretary, can I chime in for just 1 second? Mr. Sheldon and Chairman, Secretary Hayes and I met with CAM virtually within days of COVID. And these are all the largest manufacturers within the state. Before a lot of guidelines were set out by Dr. Stack, Toyota, Ford, some of them, they were already out in front of the curve and they were telling us what they were going to do. And I assure you, we shared every bit of that with the governor and his executive staff.
We sure appreciate that, and thank you for the work you did. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Representative
Chairman,
Fugate,
thank you.
if you could, we'll need to hurry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Yeah, we have a couple more, Mr. Secretary.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, Secretary Hayes, this is Representative Fugate from the 84th District. In the last couple of years, we've been working on a regional ATV trail system that is patterned after the Hatfield-McCoy Trail System in West Virginia. And when Hatfield-McCoy Trail System started, it was a tourism, it was under the tourism, but since they have changed it over to the economic development because economic impact last year in West Virginia was $38 million in West Virginia. And so that's what we're trying to do in Kentucky. I guess my question for you would be, is there any way I could contact your office to set a meeting up with you or your staff to try to get us to look at the economic impact that it'll bring to us?
Sure. Be glad to do it.
All right. Thank you, sir. I'll be in touch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I'm going to finish up unless someone else has another question. And Katie, you may be the best to answer this. And I guess the concern is with the fiscal impact of all the COVID issues. Do you all have concerns that it's going to impact our ability with the economic incentives? I know in our part of the state there are a couple pretty significant prospects that we're looking at. Are the conversations there with the governor, and are we being very sensitive to that to ensure that we keep these this process moving forward and those incentives are available and that money is not taken from the cabinet and used elsewhere?
Katie, you want me to?
I was saying, you can start if you want, or it's up to you.
Yeah. Those are always the conversations we have, and you're astute in that oftentimes this is a really competitive business when you're competing. If you don't have any balances, these consultants, they are looking at who has the money and who doesn't have the money. And other states will compete against you and say, they don't have the money. And it used to be Texas and Massachusetts, and they would say, we can write you a check. Now, our goal is not to write any checks if we can get by with it, but we need to have the money and the ability to look like we have the ability to write the check, and then we'll negotiate with them. So yes, we always are concerned about marshaling our resources. Now, that being said, we're part of the whole. And I guess this is the former budget director in me when years ago I was the budget director in the 80s. There is a government-wide view that the governor and his people have, and they're going to allocate resources, but it is very helpful to have a committee like this that understands our business and our processes. That's why it is helpful to have you all understand it. And when we come over there for hearings, those kinds of questions, and we'll be honest with you about those. what our limitations are based upon the available resources or whatever, but I have the same concern you do overall. It's probably the same answer you get from most cabinet secretaries about whatever it is their portfolio is.
Thank you very much, sir.
But I appreciate the question.
And I've got one final question from Senator Schroeder. It has to do with the cabinet's overall strategy as we move forward. Do you all have any plans to announce an overall plan where the emphasis is going to be on economic development and, you know, what the following years, where you're going to focus? And this is in relation in northern Kentucky, a lot of projects booming up there right now, and Senator Schroeder's just curious about the overall strategy.
We're familiar. It's a timely question because your Boone County judge, who worked with for years, he called on behalf of the other two judges, and the rest of my team doesn't know it, but I'm going to line us all up to be able to have a meeting with the three judges up there and Senator Schroeder or whoever else that they bring in. I've only texted with him, so we're going to have a phone call on Monday, and we'll talk about those very things. We'll talk about what's going on there, what tools they have. We've been involved with them a lot, and Northern Kentucky's in a very fortunate position. A lot of things happening in spite of the fact that, you know, the air service is down, but you know, DHL and some of the development projects up there are pretty exciting.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate it very much. Something I want to add just before we close out, and I don't see any other questions. Tony, I just want to thank you personally for the work that you've done. And if members of the committees can see that Tony is very shy and soft-spoken. You know, I have had conversations with him during all this when he's at home and I could hear kids screaming in the background and talking about PPE and finding those items. And you have been a tremendous asset to the Commonwealth and I think a great addition. And we are glad that you are there, my friend, and really do appreciate all your work and look forward to working with you further. And Katie, I'm glad the cabinet kept you. You are too an asset, and I look forward to continue to working with you. And Commissioner Taylor, I don't know you very well, but I hope to have a conversation with you soon, sir.
Look forward to it.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad the governor hired me. You let me do this job. I mean,
thank you.
I've never gotten to do.
Very good. Any other questions? Any other issues need to be brought up? Folks, thank you so much for your presentation today.
Thank
members
you.
of the committee.
Thank you, Senator.
Members of the committee, thank you for your time. I apologize for keeping you over. I do that every time I chair a committee, so you should be used to it by now. If there is no other business before this committee, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. All right, how do we hang up?